How is everybody doing? Welcome back to another live stream on the channel. Bitcoin is losing pretty much all the gains of the week. At one point, this was looking like it was going to be an exceptionally bullish week for Bitcoin, but we've basically given back all of those returns, and we could even close the week in the red the way it is looking right now. Just had to close a separate window. I had myself speaking whilst I was speaking, so it was very distracting. But it looks like we might actually have a very lackluster weekly close after a week which could have been very bullish. And I was telling everyone that essentially we need to close the week above $74,000 if we want any chance of continuation to the upside. And we haven't managed to do that. You know, yet again, it's been another bit of a disappointment for Bitcoin and for crypto. And Ethereum looks even worse than Bitcoin. If we look at Ethereum, it might be on track to print, I think, something like the 7th red weekly candle in a row. Maybe 7th, maybe 8th, something like that. We'll check over Ethereum a little bit later in the stream. But it's looking pretty bad for the crypto market. And I've been very clear that there could be more pain in front of us. If we want to confirm a potential low, I think we need to have multiple weekly closes above $74,000. Otherwise, it's just chop. And I've said before as well that I think it would actually be bullish if we were to go down for one more low, because that way we could create a bullish divergence in the chart. And typically after a bullish divergence, you can have room for more of a sustained bounce to the upside after that. So in this stream, we're going to discuss Bitcoin. We're going to discuss the altcoin market as well. I'll be updating you on my favorite altcoins and my portfolio. And we'll also be discussing what's going on in the Middle East with the US involvement, continuing. Trump's been using big words. He said that he wants unconditional surrender from Iran, which is a huge increase of the temperature compared to what he was saying initially. So we'll be discussing that and really how much further this situation could escalate, because it's not looking great. I saw videos of Iran last night, or even this morning, I think it was, the cloud, the big gray or even black cloud that was covering Tehran, the capital city of Iran. Apparently, it was even raining oil. It was that bad. The scenes were disastrous. The fire was huge. And it's just not looking good for the world at the moment. And it looks like things are getting out of hand. Things are escalating quicker than we can even conceptualize. And I think it's important to discuss it because oil is spiking. This has a direct impact on the market. This isn't a political show, but sometimes politics is very, very relevant to mention when you're looking at markets, particularly when it's leading to one of the biggest spikes on oil that we've seen in a long time, and it's broken out of a multi-year downtrend that it's kind of been in, and we've been monitoring that resistance on oil for years, and eventually I said there would be a war with Iran and oil would break out. And that's exactly what the trigger point for a breakout in oil has been. And I told loads of people in my Discord group, right? I'm talking well over a year ago. Don't believe what Trump is saying about no new wars. He will get into power and he will orchestrate a war in the Middle East. Just follow the money, right? And people didn't believe me. People thought I was nuts. People thought I was talking nonsense. But I told them very clearly, there will be a war with Iran. Might not be in his first year. Maybe it's his second. Maybe it's his third. I can't tell you exactly when it will be. But there will be a war. And there won't be peace. Okay? So get that out of your head. You're delusional if you think there's going to be peace. Never happens. Never happens. But Bitcoin, very lackluster this week. I mean, or it's ending in a very lackluster manner. It looked like it could have been a very strong week. And if we take a look at the charts here, you can see exactly what's going on. We had a real nice wick up here to $74,000, and we rejected almost perfectly at that major level of the March 2024 all-time high. and as well the tariff low of the tariff Armageddon that we had during April. Major level, for me, that is like the midpoint of Bitcoin structure. If you're above 74K, arguably on the higher time frames, you're still maybe in a bull trend, in an uptrend. If you're below 74K on the higher time frames, you're clearly in a downtrend. You're clearly in a bear market. So that's why I've been so clear that I'm not getting super excited until we get a weekly close confirmed above that level. And it's very evident that that's not going to happen, unfortunately, this week. We couldn't maintain those levels. As soon as we got up to 74, the sellers stepped in, they started selling, and consequently we're sat here at 67K for the weekly close potentially. So very bad week if you think about it, compared to how it could have been. But get your questions in the chat, get your comments in the chat. I can see we have a super chat. I will go over the super chats first. But I do want to discuss a little bit more about the market, because Bitcoin, as of right now, is in fact holding a golden pocket. So if it can hold this golden pocket here, then that is somewhat bullish, right? You can see there's a chunk of volume as well around this golden pocket. We did actually lose the volume POC, which was slightly higher, but you can still see, right, there's a lot of volume, previous volume around that golden pocket, a lot of previous price action, and typically Bitcoin does like to come down to the areas where most of the volume occurs. So it wouldn't surprise me if we get a bit of a bounce from this golden pocket. But all things considered, I mean, it's a clear rejection at 74K. Clear as day rejection at the major level of 74K. And like I said, until we get above that, we're still very much in a downtrend, and you've almost got to assume that we could continue going a little bit lower. Now, when I say we could go lower, I'm not talking about going down to 30K or 20K or anything ridiculous. I'm just talking about maybe 55K is the next move. Maybe we come down to this macro golden pocket here. Maybe we hit the lows again and double bottom there. But you can expect lower so long as we're below 74K. It's as simple as that. But I wanted to mention the code for the VIP group is still active. Use the code at checkout, WW3, and you're going to save yourself 25% off any of the membership options. I continue to be in the group 24/7, in voice chats, in the text channels, providing announcement updates, providing charting alerts, my buy alerts, my sell alerts, my trades, everything, the whole lot. Continue to be doing that on a daily basis. And there's certain altcoins, certain low caps and mid caps that are starting to approach potential buys for me. And I'm getting feelings kind of like in 2022 when I bought into some of the AI coins where I made 20 and 100x's left, right, and center during a period of a few months. I'm starting to get those feelings that there is going to be quite a nice risk-on period in front of us. Probably at some point in Q2, I'm expecting that, just because of how much this market's been beaten up. Obviously, Bitcoin's been beaten up a lot, but if you look at the altcoin market, that's been in a downtrend for even longer. You could even make the argument, guys, that altcoins have been in a bear market since 2021. You could make that argument and it would have some merit. I hear certain individuals making that argument and it does have some merit. Others hasn't made a new all-time high, not even close, since 2021. Total 3, which includes stablecoins, by the way, so it's kind of deceiving, that made a slight higher high on a wick. So nothing spectacular, nothing amazing. If you look at loads of the top altcoins from last cycle, Polkadot, Cardano, just to name a couple, haven't even gotten close to the previous highs. So in many ways, we haven't seen an altcoin bull run. We've certainly seen a Bitcoin bull run, and we've certainly seen certain altcoins have bull runs. But there was no major altcoin bull run. Now, with that said, don't be mistaken. We did have 3 mini altcoin seasons, right? And people get confused. They conflate the terms bull run and alt season. Alt season means you had a period of altcoins outperforming Bitcoin. That's what an altcoin season is. So we did have 3 mini altcoin seasons where altcoins were drastically outperforming Bitcoin for those 3 periods. But the problem was, it was not a parabolic altcoin season. It was a very tamed altcoin season. Very disappointing altcoin season. Now, I'm making the argument that next cycle we have a mega altcoin season, like bigger than a lot of people could even imagine. But even before then, because it's hard to put a time frame on that, that could be in a year or even 2 years from now. But even before then, I am expecting a very big counter-trend rally to the upside just because of how oversold we are getting. Particularly when you look at Ethereum, Solana, some of the top altcoins, XRP, they're getting very oversold and they are due quite a nice push up to the upside. So I'm expecting a counter-trend rally at some point anyway, which is going to allow for us to make some really good gains on altcoins. And then maybe it is chop for the rest of the year. And then into next year is when I believe that we are going to see a brand new bull run in a way start. And that's where I believe we will make a new all-time high on Bitcoin. And we'll see altcoins really start to pick up the pace. But you don't even need to wait until next year. We will still see a lot of gains this year when we get that major counter-trend rally, which I do believe will happen, and I believe it will be better than a lot of people think. You know, people are thinking we're just going to rally up to 80k and then go back down to 40. I think people could get caught off guard. We could see a very big amount of FOMO come back in the market as long as the stock market is propped up. We could even rally up to 100k this year. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy to people, but I would not be surprised if we do end up rallying up to 100k this year on a counter-trend rally. And then we come back down, and then we start heading back up next year. Now, when I say we come back down, that doesn't necessarily mean another low. It's possible that we go down to another low, but I think the ultimate max pain scenario would be a bottom before Q4. I think maximum pain for retail would be a bottom on Bitcoin before Q4, because as of right now, it seems like 9 out of 10 people are expecting a bottom in Q4. Like if you go around, you speak to people, it seems like everyone is expecting a Q4 bottom. I'm not really hearing anyone in the same camp as me saying that it will probably be to the left of Q4 and that we've already front ran a lot of this bear market already. So honestly, I think maximum pain, the scenario that would catch people off guard the most, would be an earlier bottom than Q4. Now, people will say, well, what about the 4-year cycle top that we had in 2025? That was in line with the cycle. Well, yes, it was, but I remember the sentiment back then. The masses were arguing that we would go into 2026. They absolutely were. I don't care what anyone says. I was running polls. I saw polls from other people. Pretty much everyone thought Bitcoin would continue rallying into 2026. And the main reason for this was the whole argument that people were purporting regarding QE and the easing of the monetary policy and the rate cuts. Every single Tom, Dick, and Harry was basically saying we would rally into Q1, we'd have an extended cycle, and it would be all to do with QE. Everyone was saying that. So I don't want to hear people say, I don't want to hear people use the 4-year cycle as an argument, you know, the fact that we had a normal top. I don't want to hear people use that to say that we can't have an earlier bottom than Q4. Because what happened, and only certain people understand this, okay, because this is getting into deep psychology here. What happened is everyone was expecting the bull run to continue. Not everyone, but let's say 7 out of 10 people were saying that we wouldn't top out in Q4. Now, I called the top on the week, on the day. I said that that was the top with a high degree of certainty, or more likely than not, it was the top. So I'm neutral in this. I haven't got any bias. It's not like I'm coping here. So I did call the top on Bitcoin, but that stream was the most disliked live stream I've ever done. The backlash I got from that live stream was insane. People were saying that I was crazy. People were saying we have to rally into 2026 because of QE, because of this, because of that. The business cycle, all these different reasons they were saying the 4-year cycle would break and we would rally into 2026. So that wasn't the consensus viewpoint. Even though, yes, if you look at the 4-year cycle, clearly we should have had a Q4 top. But the masses, they flipped. Whatever reason, when push came to shove, when we actually approached Q4, they all changed their mindset because 126k wasn't high enough for them. They were all expecting 150 to 200. So they couldn't conceptualize the fact that that was the top. So I would say 70% of people didn't expect that to be the top. They were expecting continuation to the upside in the coming months. Hence why that live stream was the most disliked live stream I ever did when I came out and said that it was the top. Hence why people were calling me crazy. Hence why when I was going all over X, everyone kept saying that we were going to rally into Q1 2026. It was an extended cycle, business cycle, following the money supply, QE, all these different reasons were given as to why Q4 wouldn't be the top, as to why October wouldn't be the top. So that was not the consensus viewpoint back then. I want to make it clear. That was not the consensus viewpoint. So what happened is everyone got wrecked. Everyone got absolutely wrecked because they didn't follow the 4-year cycle. So now they've all come around to the 4-year cycle again. Now every single person pretty much is on board with the 4-year cycle because you can't argue against it at this point because we literally topped in October in line with the 4-year cycle. So everyone's on board now. Everyone, pretty much. Everyone wasn't on board in October. It was actually a minority viewpoint to say that that was the top back then. Now everyone's on board with it because they all got wrecked and they're committing to themselves. From now on, I'm going to follow the 4-year cycle. That's what they're all saying in their heads. And I have a very good read on psychology because I have a Discord group with like 1,000 people in it and I'm talking on voice chats every day. So I can see the psychology that people are operating through. And everyone's kind of come to terms now with the 4-year cycle. Everyone is on board. They've accepted that this is the way it is. It can't change and it's here forever. And that is why I believe there's going to be an upset because that is a dangerous viewpoint. When 90% of people, or even more maybe, are just set in their way following the 4-year cycle now and they've just accepted that it is the way it is. I'm not going to argue against it anymore. That's when actually it breaks and it goes the other way. So I could be wrong on all of this. I'm not saying I'm going to be 100% right, but I really wouldn't be surprised if we bottom out before Q4. Okay, you can clip it. You can note it down. Like I said, I'm happy to be wrong. Gives me more time to buy Bitcoin, gives me more time to buy altcoins. In fact, I want to be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I am incorrect. But I can't help but say, based off market psychology, based off intuition, and based off the economy and some other things I'm seeing, and the fact that we literally dumped to the 200-week moving average within a few months. I mean, that was already basically a bear market just in Q1. We almost completed a bear market in Q1. That move alone in Q1 was almost a full bear market. That's how much we came down if you base it off the moving averages on the higher time frames. So based off all of that, I've come to the conclusion that a Q4 bottom is not my base case. And that I believe we will bottom earlier than Q4. And I hope that makes sense to people because it is a bit complicated sometimes and I can struggle to get my words out the way I want them to come out. Because I understand it in my own head, but sometimes I struggle to allow other people to understand it, right? But I'm telling you, in October, the masses believed we were going higher and the masses believed the cycle was going to break and we were going to rally into 2026. That's what people believed back then. The masses are usually wrong. The masses back then were arguing against the 4-year cycle. The masses right now are arguing in favor of the 4-year cycle. And that's the main reason, obviously one of many, but that's the main reason why I'm very skeptical. Because a large part of my investment philosophy is psychology. You know, some people may say that's wrong. You know, there may be some investors, some traders out there that say that's just nonsense. You shouldn't be looking at psychology. You should just be purely looking at the charts, purely looking at the levels. And I get that, but everyone has their own strategies. And one of the things I'm very good at is being able to read the room. Okay, I'm pretty good at charting, but I'm not some charting whiz like some people, right? Some people can literally do all these insane Ichimoku clouds, all these different indicators, all these different patterns. I can do a lot of these things. I know how to use them, but I'm very good at the market psychology, at reading the room. And all Bitcoin is really is psychology. That's all the chart is, showing you the psychology. So, and one of my core principles is that the market will try and wreck as many people as possible. So you've got to think in that frame of thought, right? What's going to be the most devastating effect? And I think the thing that would cause the most devastation would be a bottom to the left of Q4. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, let's discuss World War III, because I see a lot of people in the chat asking me about that. So things are definitely escalating at a rate which we cannot comprehend. So I think it's important to have a segment where we discuss the geopolitical situation. So, if I can say this, there is this site called monitorthesituation.com, and you could essentially get this live kind of report on everything that's going on. So it's telling you kind of what's happening. So USA F-35A takes off from Jordan for Iran mission. So it tells you, before it reaches the news, it tells you what's going to happen. So US submarine sinks Iris Denner frigate in the Persian Gulf. And you can see all these different things that are occurring. So I highly recommend that people, you know, if you're trying to see live updates, use this. This is one good way of doing it. I'll also give you a couple of good X accounts to follow. Doesn't benefit me at all. I'm not affiliated with these guys whatsoever. So, like I said, it doesn't benefit me. So there's this site, or there's this guy called World War III Monitor. And there's this guy as well called Walter Bloomberg. So these are two accounts that I use to give me live updates on things that's going on. So Walter Bloomberg, that's one. And then the other one is called World War III Monitor. So things are all going off right now. And, you know, it begs the question, how much further could this situation get out of hand? And could we end up in a situation where there's boots on the ground and there's a full-scale war? Or could we even end up in a situation that's even worse than that? You know? And we don't even want to talk about those things because we don't even want to think about it, right? But I certainly think it favors Iran to have boots on the ground. That's my take on this. They can drag this out a lot longer than people think. And it might be within their strategic interests to drag this out long, you know, and prolonged. It is potentially not in the strategic interest on a political level from the Trump administration to drag this out because they know it is deeply unpopular with the masses, especially with the younger generation. So they need to get the job done. They need to go in and out and walk away. Otherwise, it reflects badly on the administration because generally people don't understand why this war is happening and they just oppose it. They don't want war. The masses don't want war. And war is generally very unpopular. So Trump understands that in order for them to have a chance in the midterms, this needs to probably get put aside. And maybe they need to pass the baton on to Israel. And they need to just get it over and done with. They need to move on and move out. But then a lot of people say Israel don't have what it takes to fight this war alone. They need the US to do this. So you've got all these different interests going on right now. I deeply believe that this is going to hurt Trump on a political level if they do a boots on the ground style invasion. I believe it's already hurting them on a political level. If you look at the polling, people don't support this. If they send boots on the ground and even more Americans die, I think that the Republicans are completely toast in the midterms. Like, they don't stand a chance. So on Trump's side, they need to get this done. They need to get this over because they're aware how unpopular it's going to get. On the Iranian side, they're not responsible for election to the electorate, right? There is no elections in Iran. So they can actually drag it on as long as it takes on a political level. Now, yes, you might have uprisings or discontent, but there is no election. So there's no time frame where they need to get this over and done with and, you know, get back to other topics. Also, the terrain of Iran, extremely mountainous, and it's kind of like a desert. So you've got a mountainous desert terrain. That is typically not something that leads to success when it comes to a boots on the ground invasion from the US. We've seen how unsuccessful they've been before with these types of terrains. We've seen how long they can drag out. Afghanistan is one example, right? Afghanistan, a poor country, a small country, it's not huge. You'd think America would just walk over them, but that doesn't happen because of the terrain, because of the will of the people, because of many reasons. But the most powerful military doesn't always win in a war. Otherwise, America would have won every single war within a day, if that was the case. They would have walked over Iraq in a day. They would have walked over Afghanistan in a day. But these things don't happen because it's not all about which military is more mighty. So it's very interesting looking into all of this. But I think if there's a boots on the ground invasion, it's going to be pretty rough for markets when that happens. You'll have an instant drop, and then as always, the market will realize that it needs to swallow it, it needs to accept it and digest it, and then it will move on, as it always does. You know, and if you look at the years to follow after the Iraq war, the US economy, the US markets did pretty well. So I'm of the belief in terms of markets, obviously on a humanitarian level, war is terrible. No one supports it. But in terms of markets, I think it's short-term bearish typically. But once the market allows it to be digested and understands that it's the new normal, then it's actually bullish or indifferent. It's either bullish or indifferent. But I don't think it's bearish. You could make the argument that it is bullish because of more productivity, more employment typically, and especially in big scale wars, you have higher employment because everyone's put to work. And you have more money printing as well. The reason why it could be bad is obviously the oil factor. That could hurt the economy if oil is spiking out of control. So maybe it's indifferent, right? Maybe in the long run, it's just indifferent. It doesn't really make a major difference. But I can understand why people could say it could even be bullish in the long run. As long as there's no nuclear war or out-and-out destruction, right? As long as it's regional and it doesn't spill over into nuclear war, then maybe it's just indifferent on its impact for markets. So, yeah, I think there is a chance that this does end up becoming a boots-on-the-ground conflict. And like I said, if that's the case, I think Iran actually would prefer that. And I think this could end up being a multiple year long conflict. It's not going to be over instantly. And that could be a big mistake from Trump if he gets involved in a boots on the ground style invasion. Because like I said, it's not going to be easy, and there will be a lot of deaths if that's the case because of the terrain. Just go on Google, right, and search. Go on Google and search the terrain of Iran, and you'll see how mountainous it is. It can be very barren. This is not an easy country to do a boots on the ground invasion, and it's a huge country as well. Not to mention the size, a lot bigger than Iraq, and look how long Iraq took. So a boots on the ground invasion, I don't think is going to be as successful as some people think. So if that does happen, I think it's going to hurt the market in the short term. You could see a pretty big drop if boots are put on the ground. And then again, like I said, the market will understand it's the new normal, and then we'll move on and we'll get a bounce. But yeah, as of right now, Bitcoin's extremely oversold. The altcoin market's extremely oversold. And the sellers are exhausted, in my opinion. Even if we go slightly lower, you'll see a bullish divergence, which literally indicates that the sellers are exhausted. The selling pressure now isn't as harsh as what it used to be. We can see this when we go on the weekly chart. When we go on the weekly chart, we can literally see the reducing extremity of the weekly candles. So look how brutal these first 3 candles are. Huge red candle, and then an even bigger red candle down here. And then look at these following ones, all kind of small red candles. So I think the selling pressure is certainly diminishing. There's not that many people left to sell. At least I don't believe. And all we really need is like one bullish catalyst. You know, a good economic report. The last jobs data was pretty bad, so that kind of hurt the market. That's one of the main reasons why this week has been quite bad, the revision. But all we really need is like a couple good reports, and I think we'll be back into some form of counter trend rally. I think we'll get a nice rally to the upside, because we are overdue that. If you look at the weekly RSI, it's incredibly oversold. I mean, you can just see here, every single time Bitcoin has come down to this level on the weekly RSI, it's been around the bottom. Okay? So that's why I've been saying consistently, and I've been saying this for a few weeks, basically since we came down to 60K, I've said that we're either at a bottom or close to a bottom. And if we're close to a bottom, then it's really not worth worrying about, because it's basically the same thing when you zoom out. Just like 17K and 15K in 2022 were basically the same thing. So don't nickel and dime about these prices. When Bitcoin goes to 200K or even higher, and we look back at this, it's just going to be funny that people are so bothered about buying at 55 versus 58K. Like there's a huge difference. There's not. Just buy in the fear. Whenever you see the really big red days, buy into the market and you'll be fine. That's my opinion. All right. What's everyone saying in the chat? Let's see. Let's get 500 likes on the stream. Absolutely. Let's get 500 likes. That'd be amazing. I mean, I don't think we've hit 500 likes in a long time, but if we could, that would be great. So please do hit up the likes if you're watching. Crypto Goat says, do I think China will get involved in this war? Well, they do have a direct interest in this war. I hear a lot of people saying China won't get involved. They have no reason to. That's nonsense. I mean, they do have a reason to get involved, right? Oil. There's multiple reasons regarding oil, but simply the main reason I'd say is the Chinese economy is fueled largely by the Strait of Hormuz. And if you close that off, it hurts them. Now, yes, Iran can send over ships just to China and just allow the Chinese ones to go through. But that might not be the case for a while, you know, forever. You may see a full-on closure of the Strait of Hormuz. So that's one reason. The other reason why it affects China is that the US would basically have a monopoly over the world's oil at that point. If the US take over Iran and they install a pro-Western government, at that point, the US literally has either directly or indirectly full control over the globe's oil at that point. Venezuela's just been toppled. If Iran gets toppled, then they basically got the whole world's oil at that point. In terms of like the seas and control. There's no threat at that point. Every other country's government is friendly to the US at that point, or controlled by the US. So there's also that strategic interest from China, because not only do they use that oil, but if it's taken over, China are basically isolated and they're forced to buy oil from Western, like pro-US regimes. So there's a couple reasons why China do have some strategic interest or economic interest in this situation. And not to mention just the fact that China will want to weaken America, just like America want to weaken China, right? They're direct competitors on all fronts. And there's also Russian interest as well, but we won't get into that too much in this stream, but that's another topic. How's the situation in Dubai? What are the buy levels for Casper? So today it's been fine. Yesterday I did get, I think 1 or 2 emergency alerts on the phone saying to shelter in place. You know, so there was that. But seems like there's been minimal damage. I mean, when you think about how many drones and missiles have been sent, seems to be in the thousands. I think like 3 people have died. Obviously, that's a tragedy for each loss of life, but those are kind of numbers of people who die, you know, in traffic accidents and things like that in cities. So it's not anything major. But obviously, we don't want it to escalate anymore. But I think there's an awful lot of confidence in the people running the country. Like, people trust and they have confidence in the leadership and the governance, and that you know, will be kept safe, which is very rare in most cities, by the way. Most cities have no confidence in the leadership. Loving the Discord. Yeah, glad to hear it. I'm seeing a lot of new people joining the Discord. I want to give a big shout out to all of the new members. And if you are interested in joining, there's a link down below, wap.com/cryptoarchie. Use the code WW3 at checkout and you'll save yourself 25% off. It's the best group in crypto. It's active 24/7. Don't lone wolf it. Join a group. Be surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of like-minded individuals, and your chances of success in this market will be drastically higher. You can trust me on that. What are my 3 favorite stocks to hold long term? I like TKO. It's one that maybe not everyone knows, but that is a stock which I've been taking big profits on, to be honest. But this one's done really well for me. I mean, look at that trend line. Look how well it's held up. Look at that trend line. This is the parent company of WWE and UFC. TKO. So I'm a big fan of TKO. I think that's on the up. It's not tech-based either, which I like, but it moves kind of like a tech stock. What else? Coinbase I'm a big fan of. I think Coinbase will do well. And I like Robinhood as well. I know those two are kind of similar. They're both in the kind of retail finance sector. But I think both of those will do well. They're both good buys right now. So Bitcoin holding that golden pocket. Let's see if it gets a bounce. See if we can get a push up. Ben Shaw with the $2 says, what are your thoughts on AI coins? I think they'll do fine, but I've been very clear. I wouldn't buy any AI coin other than Tau personally at the moment. I'm not opposed to it in the future, but as of right now, Tau is the only one which is getting my interest. Mike says Trump is going to put boots on the ground. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I don't think he's opposed to it. Bitcoin to 20K, prepare now, sell everything. Man, you're just trying to rage bait me at this point. I'm starting to wisen up to you guys. I've noticed some of you guys try really hard to rage bait me into a reaction, into spiking my cortisol. But I'm not going to react to that because that is absolute idiocy. How am I doing? I know you like Tau. Some of the subnets are good. I do own a few subnets. But I'm keeping that close to my chest. I told the VIPs about that, but I'm keeping that close to my chest. No, I'm not accumulating Zora. I am accumulating Casper, but not Zora. I sold my Zora in some nice profits. We made a 2x in one day on Zora in the VIP. You got to take profits, guys, on these cryptos. I'm telling you. I don't know why people don't take profits, but it's super, super important. People have been round tripping. Like, I heard a comment. Someone literally round tripped Avantis all the way back down to the entry point. They made a 10x in it in 10 days. 10x in 10 days, and they round tripped it back to 0. Or back to break even. Not 0, but break even. It's just insane. Like, those types of people, they don't deserve to make money because they're too greedy. If you 10x your money in 10 days and you don't take a dime out of your position, you're just a greedy so-and-so. I'm going to try and keep it PG. You got to take profits, guys. I know sometimes you're chasing the extra X's, you want more gains, but you have to take profits. Do I see a rally on Bitcoin up to 75k before a move down to 55? I think we'll push past 75 eventually. But in the very short term, like very, very short term, we could make another move up to 74, 75, and then come straight back down again. Kind of a bit like an M pattern, right? And then just come straight back down. That's possible as well. I've seen these types of things play out time and time again. So that's possible. But I'm not trying to predict the short term too much. Like, I'm not doing that. There's no point. We just look at the higher time frames, guys. And I know the pocket of accumulation. This is the pocket of accumulation. Whenever Bitcoin enters this big pocket with the gray borders, that is when I accumulate. One of my top 5 layer ones: Solana, Sui, Casper, Tau, and Sei. When will World War III be? It depends how you define World War III. So there's like a lot of different ways people define World War III, right? I personally define World War III as 2 of the world's 4 major superpowers in direct conflict, fighting head on, 1 versus 1, right? Like, both militaries clashing. Not proxy wars, because then that's more like a Cold War, right? There's an argument that right now, this resembles more of a Cold War. That's why I said on one of my previous live streams that this is more of a Cold War 2.0 rather than World War 3. For this to become World War 3, you need a 1v1 conflict, right? You need 2 of the major superpowers directly fighting each other, not their proxies fighting each other. Or not one of the superpowers fighting a smaller country, which is what it is right now. That's the US fighting Iran. Iran's a smaller country, it's not a superpower. The US is a superpower, therefore it's not World War III yet. If you have a direct, prolonged military clash between 2 superpowers, that's when you're in World War III territory. So what are the superpowers? The US, the EU, China, and Russia. Those are the 4 superpowers of the world. Some people might not count the EU, but economically, they are still a superpower nation. Just Google the GDP of the EU countries, and if you add the UK into that bracket as being an EU country, I know it's not, but if you add the UK as well, then it certainly is a superpower contender. Maybe not in terms of military prowess, but in terms of landmass and in terms of GDP, economic power, they are still a superpower collective, right? So those are your 4 superpowers. And Russia economically isn't really a major superpower, but militarily they definitely are. And geographically they definitely are. So there's different metrics to measure a superpower, right? Doesn't have to be purely economic, doesn't have to be purely military based. It can be one or the other, or in the case of the US, it can be all of them, right? The US is a superpower in all regards. Culturally, economically, geographically, militarily, they're a superpower in all regards. So to constitute a World War III, you need head-on both of those, or 2 of those fighting. It could be the EU versus Russia. That could be a World War III. It could be China versus the US. It could be the US versus Russia. It could be the EU versus China. It could be any of these potential scenarios. But as of right now, I don't constitute it as World War III because it's the US fighting a smaller nation. When the US invaded Iraq, that was not World War III. Now, I know Iran is bigger than Iraq, but Iran is not a superpower. Therefore, I cannot consider this World War III until the US clash with another superpower. So even if Russia and China were to back up Iran, that's still not one-to-one head-on conflict, right? That would be more of a proxy war, which is what happened during the Cold War. So it's not World War III. The Cold War wasn't described as World War III. It was described as a Cold War, proxy wars. So as long as it's proxy warfare, it's not World War III. And as long as it's not 2 major superpowers fighting each other, it's not World War III. I hope that makes sense. I mean, that's how I define it, but everyone has different definitions. Amber with the 100 rupees says, hey Archie, many people are saying that this recession may be like 1929 depression. Your thoughts? Yeah, bro, people have been saying that about every single market correction since 1929. Like every single market correction, you hear people say, this time is different. This will be the depression to end the world. This will be the final one. The dollar will be over. They say that every single time there's a correction in the market. So we've got to be probabilistic and err on the side of probabilities. And I would argue that because of that, you've got to assume that this will not be another 1929 because every other time it hasn't been. Now, eventually, we will have another 1929 style crash. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in a year, maybe in a month, maybe in 20 years, maybe in 50 years. Eventually, we will have one. But you've just got to err on the side of probabilities and assume that it's not going to be that until we really start breaking major structure, which we haven't done yet on equities. I mean, the S&P, if you look at it, it's barely even corrected. It's just having a slight rounding top. That's about it. The S&P hasn't even moved down. It's barely even moved. All right, guys, we are going to wrap up the live stream here. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Definitely get yourselves over in the VIP group. Also, there's a link to Blowfin down below. Make sure to use that exchange if you want to trade on the best crypto exchange. I personally use it. And if you use my link down below, you'll be potentially able to get some USDT rewards into your account. Which is great, right? Free money, potentially, if you use my link. So definitely check it out. Highly recommend. And yeah, hit a like on the stream if you enjoyed. And I'll see you guys either in the Discord group or in the next live.